Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Mailbag for this Sunday, July the 7th, 2013. My name is John Campy. I'm the senior editor over here at AMC Movie News. And joining me today, she's the associate editor of Movie News over here at AMC Theater. She's Miss Amy Rose Eisenbach. Amy Rose, how you doing?
Good morning. Hope everyone had a nice 4th of July.
I did. I had a good 4th of July.
I had no doubt. The wife was away.
I'm not going to go into all the sordid details, but... All right, folks, for those of you who don't know, this is our mailbag show. So what we do is we love you guys sending us questions. So you can send us questions or topics anytime to amcmovietalk@gmail.com. Now, every day, Monday through Friday, we take a couple of mailbag questions. But on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, we do this mailbag show where all we do is take your mailbag questions. So by all means, send in your mailbag questions. With that being said, we're going to jump right into it. And the first question today comes to us from Brian Lake. And Brian Lake writes, recently at Wizard World Comic Con, Stan Lee mentioned that a Black Panther film was in development at Marvel Studios. While we have heard rumors of this before, with actors such as Morris Chestnut and Chadwick Boseman being linked to the role, I know that John likes Michael Jai White for the role of Black Panther. But has he considered Chiwetel Ejiofor? Like Jai White, he is a legitimate martial artist, but is additionally a Shakespearean actor and as the son of Nigerian parents. He has legitimate African roots. Amy Rose, what would you think about, first of all, Black Panther in general, the announcement of that Stan Lee made, all of this stuff? What do you think?
I mean, I'm not surprised because, Kevin Feige did say that was in their pipeline. So we were hoping that we would see Black Panther done right. I think it's very important that whoever is going to play this amazing character is a real martial artist. I think that's really, really important. I loved Chadwick Boseman in 42. I thought he did a really, really great portrayal of Jackie Robinson. Showed a lot of depth, and I loved that movie. I thought it was a great movie. But I haven't really read up on the fact if he really is a martial artist, and I think that needs to be one of the key elements of him. Obviously, a younger Wesley Snipes would have been great. If Idris Elba was a badass martial artist, I think he would have been a great pick. But I think that needs to be the key essential element of who they pick. I mean, obviously we want a really good actor, but if the fighting's not believable, I just think it's going to kill the character itself. So I do think both of those choices would be really good selections. Not only are they great actors, but they're legitimate fighters, and that's something you just can't fake on the big screen.
It's funny. Ejiofor, I've said forever, he's one of my probably on my number one spot of any list I put together of unrecognized for their talent, underappreciated actors is Ejiofor. If you've never seen Serenity, the movie version of the TV show Firefly, he plays the villain in it, and he, to me, plays one of the most terrifying villains I've ever seen in a sci-fi film. Because there's something so smooth about him. It's the smoothness that's terrifying. And he's a legitimate badass fighter. He also did this very terrible movie called Red Belt a couple of years ago, where he was a mixed martial artist in the mixed martial arts world and blah, blah, blah. And he shows off. Look, I don't know. I don't know if he is a legit martial artist. But, man, he pulls off legit martial artist. I mean, he very well may be, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He may be all that kind of stuff. Because it looked on screen, it looks like he is. He is a magnificent actor. He can pull off all these martial arts things. And you're right. For a movie like Black Panther and the type of character he is, these scenes have to be believable. Mm-hmm. I mean, there can be no compromise on stuff like this. Those things have to be believable. Now, some people might make the argument, but he'll be wearing a mask. And so then you can have a martial artist step in. Well, the problem like that is now you're limiting all the really great action scenes to when he's wearing a mask, which I don't want. But this isn't one of those situations where, well, let's at least get a good actor and then sub in a martial artist. Ejiofor is a world-class actor, and he is a legit martial artist. So I think for that reason, I love your suggestion. I still like Michael Jai White for it, but yeah, I would fall over backwards to have Ejiofor. As far as Stan Lee goes, I honestly don't know how plugged in Stan Lee is with Marvel right now. And I mean that honestly. I'm not being facetious. I don't know how plugged in he is with Marvel. I don't know if Kevin Feige is, having cognac with Stan Lee late nights over the fireplace and discussing all things movie universe.
I hope so.
That's a great vision, isn't it?
Yes.
Sitting in two big leather recliners side to side with cognac.
Smoking cigars.
Yeah, smoking their cigars and plotting out the future of the Marvel Universe together. That's probably not what's happening at all. So I don't know if he really knows. I don't know if Stan Lee is just saying that because that's what he's heard too, just like all the rest of us have heard. But maybe he's got some inside track on that. I certainly hope Black Panther is one of the films that they're doing because he's long overdue. So it's time. All right, let's move on to the next question here. And the next question comes to us from Wesley Austin, who writes, with Orlando building Cabin in the Woods for this Halloween at the theme park, what's going on with the franchise? Well, first of all, how cool is that they're building a Cabin in the Woods thing
so cool.
at Orlando Universal? I think that's a pretty sweet idea. What's going on with the franchise? As far as I know, there is no franchise. Cabin in the Woods, I believe, was a one-shot film. I mean, if you've seen the movie, that, by the way, in case you don't know, Joss Whedon was produced and was one of the writers for. If you saw the movie, where do you go after the ending of that movie? I don't see franchise once you see the end of this movie. I don't see anywhere to go. Now, on top of that, as much as a lot of us really enjoyed it and talk about it, fact of the matter is Cabin in the Woods made $44 million domestically. Well, John, what about worldwide? Well, worldwide, altogether, grand total, $66 million. It's not something you build a franchise on. So I don't think they intended it to be a franchise. I don't think the movie lends itself to being a franchise. And from a business point of view, it didn't make sense to turn it into a franchise. Amy Rose, how do you see it? Or have you heard anything else?
Way back when, I read something that Joss was, with Drew Goddard, who actually directed and he co-wrote the movie with. They were saying that, there's more of the story that can be told. But that was around the time it was being released as well. So ever since then, I haven't heard anything. I loved Cabin in the Woods. I thought it was such a fun time, and it mixed so many genres that I love so much. Horror, comedies, sci-fi, it was so great. It was done in such a great creative way. And Chris Hemsworth, before he was, the Thor we know and love, because that movie was shot way back when. I do think it lends itself really well to a theme park because what a fun concept. But in terms of a sequel, it could happen, but it wasn't really needed because I thought the ending was so perfect. I mean, it was just so out there and it was just so awesome. So I don't really think they need a sequel. I would love to see more of these horror crazy worlds from Joss and Drew. I think they're a great team. But yeah, I haven't really heard anything of it. And as we know, Joss definitely has his hands full for some time. So I don't think we're going to see a sequel anytime soon, if ever.
All right, let's move on to the next question. The next question comes to us from Asef Francisco, who writes, hey guys, I'm from Argentina, and I always look forward to your videos on YouTube, and I love them. Thanks so much, SF. My question is about what would happen if Joss Whedon would become the mind to reboot Batman and Wonder Woman? John, I know that you love Jason Momoa as Batman, but my choice is Luke Evans, and for Wonder Woman is Taylor Cole. What do you think? Well, let's start with you, Amy Rose. What would you think of a Joss Whedon Batman and picks for The Dark Knight?
I mean, I really do have faith in Joss and just handling these properties that we know and love so much. I mean, Nolan, we know that, I'm a diehard. I love him. I love his style. And I thought that his Gotham was just so rich and perfect and dark and just interesting and full of depth. And it's really hard to imagine someone else taking it over. Obviously, it's going to happen. They're just going to keep milking the Batman cow till the end of time. But I would love to see Joss's take. I know he's a real fan of comics, and it really comes across on the big screen as it did in Avengers. In terms of who I think should take the torch, it's tough. I personally did like, Christian Bale as Batman. I thought he did a really good job with both sides. Sure, maybe his voice as it progressed through the franchise got a little silly, but overall I thought he was a really, really good Batman. And it's hard to imagine who would take it. I do think Luke Evans would be decent. I think he's a good-looking guy. He's a good actor. I haven't seen enough of his to really think that he could do this. I mean, even in Fast Six, he wasn't that big of a role. Immortals, like all of these films, I like him, but I haven't seen his breakout role yet, in my opinion. I do think Armie Hammer would be an interesting choice. I think he not only physically is a good, he's a stud, but he's a really good actor. I haven't seen the darkness out of him yet, and I would really like to, because I think he can do anything. I mean, in J. Edgar, we saw more of the emotional, chops in that, and Social Network. He was a little more, sassy, and like in The Lone Ranger, we saw a little more of his action. So I really think he'd be a good choice. And Ryan Gosling, I think that Ryan Gosling would be a really good Batman. Not only have we seen the darkness that would really be required, and this, loneliness and this orphan and all that, but, he's just one of the best actors around right now. And I think, also physically, he's a believable badass, and I think he would show both sides of it really well. In terms of Wonder Woman, my first choice would be Adrienne Palicki. I think not only is she a babe, but she also is a believable badass and fighter. She was great in G.I. Joe, Friday Night Lights. I just think she's a really good actress who, again, needs that breakout role. And I think that physically she's a babe and, could fight some do it up. So I think that she would be really great for that role as well.
Starting with the Joss Whedon thing, I love Joss. Everybody knows. I think Avengers is the greatest comic book movie ever made. Yes, better than any Batman movie that they ever made.
I disagree.
Some people disagree with me, and that's cool. But Avengers is the greatest comic book movie ever made, and and Whedon did such a great job. I mean, it took a master's hand to take all those characters and make something really coherent and do them well. I would absolutely not want Joss Whedon to do a Batman film. No, no way, no how in 1,000 years would I want Joss Whedon to do a Batman film. And here's why. Part of the thing that makes Whedon so great is his style. He's got a wink of the eye, kind of nudge you in the ribs kind of style that makes his properties so damn entertaining to watch. We saw that in Angel. We saw that in Buffy. We saw that in Firefly. We see it in Avengers. The dude is just great at that. Even his horror, when you're looking at Cabin in the Woods, has a lot of the nah. It's got a lot of that too. That just makes it so refreshing and so fun. There's no place for that in a new Batman. I just don't see that in the post The Dark Knight Returns. I'm talking about the comic book. In the post Dark Knight Returns Batman, I don't see Joss Whedon being a fit for something like that. Now, look, I think Steven Spielberg is the greatest filmmaker that ever lived. That's my opinion. I know a lot of people have other opinions, and there's a great debate to have there. But I don't think Steven Spielberg is the right fit for everything either. I mean, it's a matter of fit, and I just don't think Whedon's style and what he would bring to Batman is what I would want in a Batman right now. So that's just my take on that. Of course, I wouldn't cry in my soup if they announced that he was doing it. But besides, like Amy Rose mentioned, he's under contract to Marvel for a long time to come.
Yeah.
And we know there's going to be a new Batman before, or at least they're going to be in motion with the new Batman long before Avengers 2 ever comes out. So there's always that to consider. Now, as far as who could play Batman, yeah, I'm a big proponent of Jason Momoa. I think this dude has not got the opportunity that he really needs. He blew his chance with Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's his fault. Because I guess he was holding out for more money, and Marvel said, "Okay, bye." Which is what Marvel does, and I really respect that Marvel does that. They generally don't let actors hold them hostage, unless it's Robert Downey Jr. But anyway, I won't get into that whole thing again. I love Momoa for it. I think he's got out of everybody that people mention, I still want a true physical representation of Batman, and to me, the closest guy to do that is Jason Momoa. He's a beast. But, women swoon over this guy, too. Like, he's he's really good looking. He's a physical beast. He is a real martial artist, a real fighter. So I love him. I'd love him as Bruce Wayne. I would love him as the Dark Knight himself. As far as a guy like Luke Evans, I'm a huge Luke Evans fan. I've been a big fan of this guy since before Immortals came out. He was the only modestly small redeemable part of that horrible Three Musketeers movie. Like he was just I mean, that was just a rotten situation we put in. But he took this garbage of a film and actually made the best out of it that he could. I thought he was really good as Zeus in Immortals. I really liked him in Fast 6. My only hesitation with Luke, he also hit on my wife once, which I'll forgive him for that. But the only hesitation I have with Luke is going back to that physical thing. He's not a really big guy.
He's not.
But, we've seen in Immortals, he can get ripped. And if he can... So I'm open to the idea of Luke Evans. But yeah, my choice would still be that. As far as Wonder Woman goes, I don't like to speculate too much on Wonder Woman. But if I had to, two things, I mentioned this before. Don't be too quick to want Joss Whedon to do a Wonder Woman film. I read Joss Whedon's Wonder Woman script. Not his best day in the office. Not his best work. But and I don't mind your suggestion, but for me, and I know this sounds terribly stereotypical, but if you want to talk about somebody who physically looks like a badass, who can actually pull it off on screen, is really great looking, and is really a good actress as well, I got to go with Kate Beckinsale. I know, idealistically, I'd want somebody a little bit younger, but if you saw that remake of Total Recall, her action scenes, boom, mind-blowing. Her action scenes were so good. She was such a badass in that. And obviously in her Underworld films as well. And when you look at her arms and her shoulders, this woman is in shape. I mean, she looks like she could mess some dudes up. And I really like that. And you don't see that in a lot of actresses today other than Gina Carano. But
acting's not there.
That's the acting isn't there. Exactly. Yeah. So, that's kind of my 2 cents on it and how I see it. All right, let's move on to the next question. The next question comes to us from Avery Hinks. And Avery writes, "Hey MC, you guys are really awesome." Well, thank you, Avery. My question is about Sony. I know Sony does not own any Marvel properties besides Spider-Man. However, Sony does own other superhero properties such as Hancock, the Green Hornet, and Hellboy. What would you think of the idea of Sony making its own superhero cinematic universe? Well, first things first, I'm not totally sure that Sony has Hellboy anymore. I'm not sure. They might. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. But let's assume, for the sake of this discussion, that they do. I'm going to be honest with you, Avery. When I first read your question, I thought, oh, good, another lunatic writing in a really stupid question. And then I thought about it. Yeah, I'm down. I think it's a great idea. Why not create their own cinematic universe with Spider-Man? Look, Green Hornet, you got to take that out altogether. Green Hornet does not fit into anything at all. First of all, it completely failed. They never do it again. Plus, it's just a guy running around with a gun. I mean, there's nothing there. But I'm going to tell you, yeah, the last act of Hancock was pretty sloppy and terrible. But overall, I was really intrigued by Hancock. I actually thought there was a lot of potential there to do more. So I'm down with Hancock and Hellboy. I could see Hellboy and Spider-Man hanging out. I could totally see that in the different styles. So I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think this will ever happen in a million years. But I'm telling you right now, Avery, I think you're onto something. I think you've got a great idea. I would totally be down for this. Amy Rose, what do you think about a Sony comic book cinematic universe?
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting question. I'm torn on it. I mean, the Green Hornet was so bad. It was so bad. And while I have really liked Spider-Man, I don't necessarily have the faith in Sony to create something of that depth just yet. I really do like Hellboy. I love Guillermo del Toro. Ron Perlman's the man. But yeah, I don't know if I believe in what they could set out yet. I would like to see more with what they do with those kind of films. Hancock was fun, but it wasn't brilliant by any means. It was a fun time. So, I don't know. I just think it'd be too deep. And the universes that they all live are, I don't know how they would cohesively make it happen the way that Marvel has so brilliantly done and all this. So I don't know if it'd be fun. It'd be a fun ride, but I don't know if I have the faith in Sony yet, bottom line.
All right, let's move on to the next question. The next question comes to us from Vincent, and Vincent writes, "Thanks for the great show. I find that in X2 and X-Men 3, characters like Cyclops seem to have less screen time than the rest of the characters, not to mention Warren Worthington, Kitty Pryde, and Colossus. So in your opinion, for comic book movies like X-Men, Avengers, how many numbers of characters you think the studio should cast in order not to present a problem of seemingly overcrowding and ensuring that each and every one of them should have equal screen time. Amy Rose, what do you think about that?
I think that, I mean, it's true. A lot of the times it does appear that there's overcrowding and all that, but that's how X-Men has always been. There's so many mutants in this universe with different abilities and different powers and the way they can help each other and oppose each other and all this. I mean, X-Men's my favorite, but I think that it's always going to be that way. There's going to be a certain pull to the characters that are featured more. First of all, with Colossus, I have not liked how they've portrayed him in the X-Men films to date. Colossus is a great character, and they made him kind of a wimp in the earlier films. So I'd really like to see Colossus done right. But, I mean, that's the X-Men universe. There's a lot of characters, and they're not going to be able to feature all of them. I think that's one thing that Joss Whedon did brilliantly in his Avengers universe, is show all these superheroes with, equal screen time, maybe not to the dime, but, like, showing them all so they feel like we got enough love out of all of them. I think he did that brilliantly. Definitely in, Bryan Singer's versions and Brett Ratner's X3, like, there's a lot on screen, so they can't feature all of them. I don't think there's, like, a number that you need to focus on, but I would rather them show less mutants done right, like Colossus finally done right, than not. So I don't know if that really answered your question, because I don't really think that there's a number, but X-Men has always been a really stacked, and that's been our big fear with Bryan Singer's, his next Days of Future Past. That's been our big thing, is that they keep adding all these characters to it, and we don't want them to become diluted because all of them have such an interesting story, and I'd really like to see, their abilities on the big screen done right. So I do have a little bit of apprehension every casting update we've heard, but I think that this is going to be Singer's redemption story, and hopefully all the characters are done right. That's my hope.
See, this question kind of comes up a lot. Usually it's in the form of how many villains are too many villains and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, movies like X-Men, you got a lot of characters, and absolutely that's there. But you look at just about any movie, and in just about any movie you're going to have 20 to 30 characters. Some characters will walk on screen for a second and have one or two lines. Some characters will be your lead characters and have the majority of the screen time. Look at the Star Trek movie. How many crew members were on the bridge of the Enterprise? A lot. Yep. There's a lot of characters. And each one of them are members of Starfleet. They all have a rank. They all have whatever. But that's just making the world. And when you're an X-Men, there's nothing saying that everybody who's in a movie has to have the same amount of screen time and has to have the same amount of lines and have a focus on them. In your story, like any movie, you pick the couple of characters that this story is really going to revolve around, and you revolve the movie around them, and then you have other characters just kind of rounding around them, filling out the world. In the case of X-Men, what Bryan Singer has always done is use mutants to round out that world. Mm-hmm. And just because we see, if we're going to see a Bishop, and I hope we see Bishop.
I hope we see Bishop.
If we see Bishop in X-Men Days of Future Past, it doesn't mean he has to be one of the prominent characters. He can be just one of the guys filling out the world. And I think comic book fans have always liked that in the X-Men films, because even though, like, for instance, Colossus or Toad or other types of characters who maybe we like or recognize, maybe they're not in the movie, or maybe they're not real characters in the movie, but at least we got the wink from the director saying, hey, look, he's there, though. He's there. He is in this world. This favorite character of yours is at least in this world. And I kind of like that they've used other mutants and other comic book characters to fill out the world. And as we move forward for Avengers, and look, the Avengers universe is going to start to get really crowded really fast. Now that they're bringing in Ant-Man, probably Doctor Strange. We're already talked about Black Panther. I think Luke Cage is probably not far away from now. We got the Guardians of the Galaxy coming. We're going to have a lot. So ultimately, we're going to have some movies from the Marvel universe too that are going to center on certain characters. And then a lot of these other characters, maybe even other characters that had their own movie, are just going to fill out the world. But that's not unlike every other movie. Every other movie has lots and lots and lots of characters. Just some you focus on, and some that just fill out the world.
I really want Bishop and Cable and Gambit. I really want them to come back. They're such great, underutilized characters. Come on, Singer.
Yeah, I love Bishop. Absolutely love Bishop. Okay,
So good.
the next question and the final question of the day comes to us from Chris Mueller, who writes, "Greetings and salutations, AMC Movie Talk. I wanted to know, what's your most disappointing film of 2013 so far? For me, it's Oblivion. Thanks." Well, before I throw this over to Amy Rose, let me set some context here. When we're talking about most disappointing film, we're not talking about the worst film. Because, you can have a really awful film, but all of us knew it was going to be awful. So when we're talking about most disappointing, here's how I grade it myself. I take where on my scale was I thinking it would be, okay? And then where did it actually end up? Now, to me, the film that has the greatest distance between those 2 points is what's the most disappointing. Because I could have a film that I thought would just be, let's say, okay, middle of the road, but it ended up being total garbage, like really, really garbage, and have a big wide gap. And that might end up being my most disappointing film of the year, even though I only thought it was going to be pretty okay. So with that being said, Amy Rose, give us a couple of your most disappointing, but don't cop out. What is your absolute most disappointing as well for this year so far?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would put anticipation and expectations, what falls short of that. And the number one that comes to mind is Gangster Squad. I was so excited about Gangster Squad. Not only do I love gangster movies, Goodfellas, Untouchables, there's so many amazing classic ones. I went on the set visit and spoke to the actors and Ruben Fleischer, and he just had such a vision of what he wanted to do here, and talk about the most underutilized cast. Sean Penn, Ryan Gosling, Emma Stone, like it goes on and on and on with the high caliber set of actors that was in this film, and it just fell short for me. I was so excited about it. I thought the promotional campaign was interesting. I thought all the images were beautiful, but the story just fell flat. There were holes in it, and for Ruben Fleischer, for someone, he actually gave all his actors a homework assignment of watching these gangster films that he wanted each of their characters to embody, which I thought was brilliant. He really took it seriously, and I love Zombieland. I thought he's a really good director. 30 Minutes or Less was an oddball movie, but I watched it again, and I was like, okay, this was an original take. So I really thought he had something to say as a filmmaker, and so I was so excited about it, but I walked out of there going, this really could have been such an amazing movie, but it did not fall. It fell short for me. It did not really match up to my expectations. So that would be no question my most disappointing movie of 2013. What about you, John?
Unfortunately, I've got a couple that were pretty disappointing
Yeah.
to me. All of these I had really high expectations for. The one that I had the least amount of expectations for, but I was still hoping for something really good, was the Bryan Singer Jack the Giant Slayer.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's Bryan Singer. I mean, I've been a big Bryan Singer fan for a long time. I obviously love his first 2 X-Men films, Usual Suspects. I think Valkyrie does not get the credit or recognition that movie deserves. And Jack the Giant Slayer was Jack the Giant Crap Layer. I mean, it was awful. It's just terrible. It's awful. Another one for me is 42. The Jackie Robinson story.
Good.
I had such high hopes for that movie. Such high hopes. And it was badly, badly told. I just thought it was so amateurish. I think you have this great, awesome, brilliant, full source material, this true story that changed the world in many ways, not just the sport of baseball. And I thought it was just so clumsily handled, and I was really disappointed walking away. I think the story of Jackie Robinson deserves much better than 42 gave us. Another one.
Did you like Chadwick though?
Yeah, I did, but his lines were so. I felt like his lines were written by a first year film school student. I don't mind exposition dialogue. Just don't do exposition dialogue and try to make it look like it's narrative dialogue. And I felt like that's what a lot of the movie was. I think exposition dialogue can work great. Man of Steel is a great example. Man of Steel, that is all exposition dialogue. And I thought that was perfect for that movie. And it was used right. But in this case, I felt like it was exposition dialogue dressed up like narrative dialogue, and it didn't work for me.
Which is the script's fault.
Yeah, which is really the script's fault. It's hard to make a good movie from a bad script. Really hard. Another one for me that I was really looking forward to. I thought for sure this would be in my top 10 films of the year. I had it in my top 10 most anticipated films of 2013. Great Gatsby. I didn't think The Great Gatsby was horrible, but once again, we're talking about that where my expectation was, and my expectation was off the chart. My expectation was way off the chart. And to me, it was just an okay movie. It was okay at best. I've seen better renditions of Gatsby, let's put it that way. And so for me, but easily my biggest disappointment as far as the films go this year for 2013 so far, I got to line up with Amy Rose. It's got to be Gangster Squad. Oh my God. How high was our expectations? Like,
so
you're right.
High.
Great filmmaker. Great era. I mean, those gangster movies, come on. There's so much richness and goofiness and whatever within the blood-curdling seriousness of it that you can do. You've got world-class talent in there, like you were mentioning, Sean Penn. That could have been, like, as of all the great awards that Sean Penn has won, I remember a year ago thinking, this could be the role that we remember Sean Penn by 50 years from now, you know? Yeah. I mean, you got Josh Brolin, and you got Ryan Gosling, and you got him. Huge cast, great setting, great potential, good filmmaker. Blah. Oh, wow. That movie. It's not like Great Gatsby, where it was like just an okay movie. This was a bad film.
It was bad.
And so for me, my most disappointing movie of the year so far, and hopefully nothing else disappoints me more, has got to be, the Gangster Squad. So Amy Rose and I are on the same page with that.
At least Man of Steel was great. Didn't disappoint us.
No,
and our
Man of Steel,
were sky high.
I think I was ready to, develop some kind of narcotic addiction if Man of Steel disappointed me. Okay, that will do it for us, folks. We've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Listen, while I've got you, before you do anything else, take a second. Click on that subscribe button. Become a subscriber to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. It'll keep you up to date on everything important going on in the world of movie news in our Monday through Friday AMC Movie Talk Show, but also our weekend mailbag show. I want to thank, of course, our associate editor of movie news over here at AMC Movie Talk, Miss Amy Rose Eisenbach. Amy Rose, where can people find you online?
On Twitter at Amy Rosie, AMIROSIE. Thanks for having me, John.
And most of all, of course, thank you to you guys. Listen, the most important part of our shows, of course, is not what we have to say. It's what you have to say. Jump on down into the comment section of this video and leave your thoughts on any or all the topics we discussed here today. I'd love to hear, what are your most disappointing movies of the year so far? Give us your thoughts on that. Listen, I just want to mention, too, don't forget Comic-Con is coming up. Look in the description of this video for a couple of things that we're doing, including my Masters of the Web panel and our AMC Movie Talk meet and greet, where you can come and hang out with all of us from AMC Movie Talk. We hope you come out and meet us there. So that'll do it for us. Until next time, my name's John Campia for AMC Movie News, and until then, bye-bye.